don't get along at all. My dad passed away when I was a baby in an accident, and I barely have any memories of him. Adam had spent some time with him at least, but I have no recollection of what he was like. Adam never liked me, and growing up, he was my biggest enemy. He was always a bully, and my mother, being a single mom, didn't really have time to deal with our sibling rivalry because she had more important things on her mind, like paying the bills and making sure there's food on the table every day. Our uncle, my dad's brother, visited a lot and tried to help out as much as he could. My mother kept in touch with my father's family even after his demise for their sake, because they'd already lost their son. They didn't need to lose their grandkids either. My uncle was pretty much the only father figure I have ever known, and he still is my go-to person. For Adam, it was my mother. My mother didn't play favorites, but it was very apparent that if she had to pick one, it would be Adam. And that made our sibling rivalry even more intense because I wanted to be my mother's favorite as well. Unfortunately, I was always a bit of a loser growing up. I wasn't good at sports and I was mediocre at best when it came to academics. I was quite skinny and I didn't have any such talents that could set me apart. So I was always very insecure about basically everything, and that made it very difficult for me to talk to people, make friends and be popular. I was a really introverted kid and mostly kept to myself. Adam was quite the opposite. He played sports and was great at it. He wasn't too bad academically either, and he had a very different physique from mine, big and sturdy, because of his athletics. Needless to say, being his little brother was even more embarrassing for me because even though nobody said it to my face, I knew that everybody was constantly comparing me with him and thinking that I was a loser in comparison. With time, I learned to live in his shadow and would just let him walk all over me. My self-esteem really took a hit in my childhood and I was never able to recover from it. Even until my last day of high school, I barely had any friends and nobody wanted to talk to me because I just came off as weird. Things only changed for me and started looking up when I graduated and moved to college. I was a new person there and nobody knew me as Adam's little brother. So I grew into my own now that I didn't have to deal with Adam's constant bullying and could finally be my own person. I know it sounds cheesy, but I'm so thankful that I was able to go to college out of state when nobody knew me, because I don't think I would have been the person that I am today had it not been for that experience. And I have my uncle to thank for it because he was the one who paid for me to go to college. My mother had told me that she wouldn't be able to afford to send me to college so far away and wanted me to pick a location closer to home, within our city if possible. But, I had my mind set and my uncle offered to cover me and stepped up. I made a lot of friends there and graduated at the top of my class. My mother and uncle attended my graduation ceremony, but Adam didn't, even though I'd been present at his. After moving out, Adam and I didn't really keep in touch for obvious reasons. He hated me for no reason, and I hated him because he made my childhood and teen years a total nightmare. I was glad to be rid of him, and we only met on the holidays or whenever we would come back home for birthdays. It's been years and that's the arrangement that we stuck to. We didn't consider each other family beyond the confines of our house, but I did console him and send him a message when he lost all his money a couple of years ago. He'd quit his job and tried to start his own business, but failed miserably. And my uncle and mother had to bail him out since he was neck deep in debt. He couldn't go back to his old job. So, he had to move back into our mother's house for a couple of months until he was back on his feet. Even when he finally did find a job, it wasn't as great as his previous one, but he took it because he wanted to move out of his mom's house. Since he was well in his 20s and he felt embarrassed to still live with his mom, this is what my uncle told me, and it was quite upsetting because his life had completely unraveled. I felt bad for him and sent him a message of consolation, but I think he misunderstood it and thought that I was bragging or making fun of him. So, he blocked me and ignored me for the next couple of holidays. We weren't chummy when we met, but tried to keep things civil and at least greeted each other no matter how coldly. But after that message, there was no talking to each other. I would like to say that Adam's life got better, but it didn't. He took the failure of his business really hard. Every time I saw him after that, he seemed worse for the wear. My uncle told me that he had switched jobs 7 to 8 times after that, but didn't seem content with any of them. His clothes got shabbier and we could physically see the state of his mind reflected in how he acted at family gatherings. He was always either drinking or quietly staring at nothing. I say this from the bottom of my heart, but it really made me feel bad for him when I saw him in that state. I had always hated him growing up, but now it was just very difficult to hate someone who was already going through so much. My uncle always tried to include him in our conversations, but he didn't seem interested and would always take off early. I had also started bringing Riley to these gatherings after we had been together for a year. She knew about Adam and even seemed concerned about him, but there was not much that we could do. Fast forward to our engagement, which took place 2 weeks ago. Riley and I were at my uncle's house for his birthday dinner. I had asked him and made sure that he was okay with me proposing to her at his dinner party, and he was, so I went ahead with it. The family would all be there anyway, and my uncle had a beautiful house with a lovely garden. So it was just the perfect place. I had even invited her parents, but they weren't going to show up until after the proposal. So, she wouldn't be able to guess what was about to happen. After my uncle had cut the cake and stuff, I took her outside and popped a question. She said yes. And then we went back to announce it to everyone and celebrate. I did notice that Adam left within minutes of me making the announcement, but I didn't think too much of it because I was quite busy with everybody else that evening. Riley and I had a great evening and then we went back home. She didn't mention anything about Adam or his weird behavior to me after we got back home, which she usually does whenever we go to any family event of mine. We were both really drunk and tired. So, I was knocked out as soon as my head hit the pillow. But, I did wake up accidentally around 2 in the morning because I had to use the loo. When I woke up, I realized that Riley was still on her phone. And when I asked her who she was talking to, she told me that she was telling a couple of her friends about the engagement. That seemed innocent enough. So I didn't suspect anything and went back to sleep soon after. But 2 days later, while I was at work, I received a bunch of texts from Adam. It was really unexpected because the last time we had a conversation, he had blocked me. It was just screenshots of his conversation with Riley. And in those chats, they were planning to get together and hook up, which they did. It started with Adam reaching out to her to congratulate her on the engagement, and she asked him why he wasn't present for the rest of the evening. So, he told her that he was just upset about a lot of things and wanted to get out of there while he could because he didn't want to intrude on my happiness. He talked about how we have never been friends and he felt like it was inappropriate for him to be present on such an occasion for me. So, he left. He was making himself look like some sad little puppy who wasn't wanted. But, the truth is that I really wouldn't have cared if he stayed for the evening. He only wanted Riley to sympathize with him. So, it would be easier for him to manipulate her. And that's exactly what happened.